If women hate being objectified by men so much, why do so many objectify themselves online? Maybe the real issue isn't men looking, it's what happens when a woman starts seeing herself through the same lens. This isn't just about how women are seen, it's about how they've learned to see themselves. When attention becomes currency and your body becomes the product, what starts as empowerment can quickly turn into entrapment. Validation feels good in the moment, but it comes at a cost. A disconnection from the self, a constant performance for an invisible crowd, and a growing emptiness that no number of likes can ever fill. Today we're diving into the psychology of self-objectification, the Instagram anima effect, and why the modern path to empowerment may be quietly robbing women of joy, connection, and love. At some point, she stopped seeing herself through her own eyes and started seeing herself through everyone else's. This is the quiet beginning of self-objectification. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, photo by photo, like by like, comment by comment, until her reflection isn't hers anymore. It's a performance, a product, a persona. Psychologists define self-objectification as the internalization of an observer's perspective on your own body. In other words, you start to think of yourself as a thing to be looked at rather than a person who feels, desires, and lives. And this happens especially in environments where your appearance is constantly evaluated. Instagram, TikTok, Tinder. Modern platforms that reward visibility over vulnerability. Presentation over presence. What starts as empowerment often becomes surveillance. How do I look right now? Do I still have their attention? What version of me gets the most engagement? And because attention is addictive, many women learn to crave it the same way that men crave conquest. Not because they're vain, but because they've been taught implicitly that their value lives in how they look, not who they are. The danger is that this shift isn't just cosmetic. It rewires how you feel about yourself, because when your body becomes an object to be judged, you become your own harshest critic. Studies show that self-objectification is directly correlated with anxiety, body shame, and sexual dissatisfaction, and even reduced cognitive performance. Why? Because your mental bandwidth is constantly being drained by self-surveillance. You're not being, you're managing. This is the irony of modern empowerment. It promises liberation but often delivers a more invisible cage. And unlike objectification from men, which can be externalized, resisted, and even politicized, self-objectification comes from within. You can't protest it, you can't block it, because it's your own voice doing the damage. And that's what makes it so dangerous. It hides behind confidence, but it quietly corrodes your self-worth. Carl Jung once said that every man carries within him an unconscious feminine image, what he called the anima. It's the projection of his inner ideal of femininity, nurturing, mysterious, sensual, radiant. And in the same way, every woman carries the animus, her inner masculine. But in the age of Instagram, the anima has escaped the unconscious. She's not hidden in dreams or myths anymore. She's filtered, posed, and algorithmically optimized, served to millions of eyes every single day. What used to be a sacred inner archetype has become a public spectacle. And here's the paradox. Women aren't just being seen as the anima, they're trying to become her. They're sculpting themselves to match the collective male fantasy. Perfect angles, perfect skin, perfect curves. It's not just beauty, it's mythologized femininity. And in doing so, many women unknowingly start to objectify themselves through the male gaze. They become both the performer and the audience. the object, and the one doing the objectifying. But the deeper cost is psychological, because when your self-worth becomes tethered to how closely you resemble the ideal anima, you fracture. You split off the parts of you that don't fit the fantasy, the vulnerable parts, the messy parts, the aging, the real you. And here's where Jung would raise the alarm, because anytime you repress or reject a part of yourself, it doesn't disappear. It becomes a part of your shadow. And that shadow eventually seeks expression, often through depression, anxiety, or a deep sense of disconnection. So when women say, "I feel empty, I feel unseen, I feel like I'm not enough," it's not because they failed to become the anima, it's because they sacrificed their authentic self to chase an illusion. Instagram didn't invent this, but it did industrialize it. It took an ancient archetype and turned it into a never-ending performance loop. One where women compete not just with each other, but with the version of themselves that gets the most likes. And the tragedy? The real anima, the living, breathing feminine spirit, was never supposed to be perfect. She was supposed to be whole. If self-objectification is the fracture, wholeness is the repair. But healing doesn't begin with rebellion. It begins with awareness. The modern narrative tells women to fight objectification by doubling down. Take control of your image. Post what you want. Own your sexuality. But here's the catch. If you're still seeking validation through performance, the source of suffering hasn't changed. Only the costume has. Real empowerment doesn't come from mastering the male gaze. It comes from stepping outside of it entirely. And that means asking hard questions. Who am I when no one's watching? What would I wear, say, or do if there was no algorithm to reward it? Can I be loved not for how I look, but for who I am, fully and honestly? Carl Jung believed that the path to integration requires us to confront our shadow. That means reclaiming the parts of ourselves we've hidden, rejected, or distorted to fit a mold. For many women, that shadow includes the part that feels ugly without filters, the part that's tired of being a brand, the part that longs to be seen beyond her body. And here's the powerful twist. When a woman reclaims those parts, she doesn't become less radiant. She becomes more human, more grounded, more magnetic in a way that no filter can replicate. Because true feminine power was never about being flawless. It was about being real, soft and strong, seen and heard, loved and known. The world doesn't need more perfect images, it needs more whole people. We live in a world that rewards surface-level things, likes, filters, symmetry, and skin. But beneath all that performance is a deeper ache, the desire to be loved for who we truly are. And that ache doesn't go away by getting louder, sexier, or more curated. It only begins to heal when we stop performing and start integrating. Self-objectification is not a cultural issue, it's a psychological wound. And like any wound, it doesn't get better by ignoring it. It heals when we turn toward it with honesty, with courage, and with compassion. This isn't just a message for women, it's a mirror for all of us. Because every time we value ourselves or others based on appearance, every time we chase validation instead of truth, every time we confuse attention for love, we drift further from the wholeness we're all seeking. The cure isn't to stop caring about beauty. The cure is to stop believing that beauty is all you are. Empowerment without integration is a mask. But when you dare to look inward and embrace what you find, that's not weakness, that is real power. And maybe that's what the world is starving for right now. Not more empowerment, but more wholeness. Thank you for watching, and best of luck on your path towards integration.